Very good afternoon and warm welcome everyone. I've been joining to listen to Mr. Aditya Gupta on his Mount Everest expedition. And we have approximately 34 people who have joined in till now, and with more to come in. We'll allow the people to come in. However, we are going to start the session now. So this is the official beginning of the session, and very warm welcome and good evening everyone for joining in today. Merit Management has a plan for a planned talk series on leadership. I think so. This being a good effort, the very first talk series we have on leadership is from Mr. Aditya Gupta itself. When we talk about age is just a number. You can sincerely see when we talk on his experience and his journey about his passion and everything. That would be great. Before beginning the session and introducing MMA and Aditya, I'm so curious about this thing. Aditya ji, I do have few questions. I would like to just jump on the rapid fire question in the beginning itself.
Yeah, why not?
What drive you to lead your passion? What is your power that helps you to go to these adventure trips and these mountaineering and this thing? And when you talk about age is just a number, tell us how this thing happened.
Well, very simple answers as far as I'm concerned. So I think everybody, and this is what I want to say about the talk that we share today. It's not about mountaineering or Everest or whatever else. It is about whatever drives you, whatever you feel passionate about. And then you can set a higher level of achievement in that field. Okay. So Everest is only a metaphor for whatever we're trying to achieve. So even though Everest becomes a convenient thing to imagine as a challenge, other challenges depend on how we take it. So similarly, if you're just trekking around and going for the easy casual trek, then it's okay. But the moment you say Everest, people feel, kuch like, there is really something of another level. So that becomes a metaphor for anything else that we are doing in any other field. Could be music, could be charity, like Avinash is doing so much, for example. That's a fresh example in my mind. But there are other people who are doing things in any field. And then if you want to take it to a higher level of involvement and indulgence, then it becomes a metaphorical Everest. So as far as that, yes, for me, I'm lucky that nature and outdoors has been my passion since college times. And I've been fortunate enough to follow it. And as far as how, etc., for me, I'm very clear about one primary principle in life. And you can't keep postponing things that mean a lot to you to say, ये बाद में करेंगे, ये वाला milestone हो जाएगा तब करेंगे, बच्चे college चले जाएंगे तब करेंगे, business ऐसा हो जाएगा तब करेंगे. Life is every day and it's going on an everyday basis. So if you can't figure out a way to balance different things that mean a lot to you, then it is a little juvenile to think if future में आप कर लो. There is no such thing as, future.
Right. This is the main crush of the story. We'd like to listen to you on this. How to follow your passion. How would this time management thing happen? Right. But before this, let me tell you something brief about MMA. All people have joined in today. So let me again welcome you everyone from the core of my heart.
Merit Management Association is a professional, non-profit body affiliated to All India Management Association with the aim to promote scientific management in industry and trade. It also undertakes training and consultancy to improve managerial effectiveness and competitiveness of its members. Merit Management Association, formed in 1966, is registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860. The founder members of the association were Sri K.N. Mohan, Managing Director, Mohan Meekins Breweries, Sri Sultan Singh Jain, Managing Director, Saru Smelting, and Sri R. Sahai, General Manager, Dorala Sugar Works.
And now let me brief you about Mr. Aditya Gupta ji, our speaker for the day. Mr. Aditya Gupta ji is a founder of a successful brand like the Rug Republic, Sharda Exports, and the Furniture Republic. The Rug Republic is a global brand of handmade rugs and is a leading Indian rug manufacturer in the world. Mr. Gupta is an avid intrepid adventurer word traveler and the mountaineer who has climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, Chimborazo, Ecuador.
And Mutnowski. Forget the name, doesn't matter.
Right, I think so. It's quite difficult for me to pronounce this name. Mr. Gupta has dusted what a very few business people can ever dream of: scale the Mount Everest in May 2019 at the age of 50. That's the reason why I was talking about age is just a number. When many start thinking about early retirement, Mr. Gupta is an alumni of prestigious IIT Roorkee and FMS Delhi University. As Mr. Manish has already told, that Mr. Aditya is also an alumni from St. Mary's Academy. So I think so many people recognize him very well from since childhood. So with this, I would like to share this platform with Mr. Aditya. We'll listen to him about his journey, about his adventure trips they've been doing since long, and the drive, the passion he has, and how this thing we can inculcate in our lives, because it's very important to have a work-life balance. Because in today's scenario, most of us, what we personally feel, that we are either involved too much in business or too much in social life. We somehow down the line in this social networking circle, we just leave our passion behind. So how we can stick to our passion, how we can take care of all these things, I think so Mr. Aditya talk would really help us in some way to motivate ourselves. So with this grand welcome and a round of applause for Mr. Aditya Gupta ji. So the platform is with you.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you, everybody. A lot of friends out there. Hello to everybody. Some people have messaged hello, so my hello back. I will jump straight into the topic and we can do the chit chat a bit later. Since this is around leadership, and I want to just give you what my primary thought on leadership is. And I think it's not about titles, it's not about who, how many people are you sort of, being reported to by and so on. It's about a mindset. Leadership is a mindset. And we all run businesses here, and large groups or smaller groups, you've seen that people without titles have leadership mentality. And sometimes people who have, a team head responsibilities or group head responsibilities don't really display those behaviors. And I think adventure is an activity which brings out a lot in terms of what a person is really made of, and especially around long expeditions like Everest. And again, I would emphasize that Everest is just a metaphor. Anything which is long and takes a huge amount of mental and physical endurance and throws challenges at you brings out what you were really made of. You can't fake it in long, tough expeditions or long, tough projects. You can't wing it. You have it or you don't have it. Okay. Now, when you don't have it, that doesn't mean you can't have it. And Everest for me also was an expedition to kind of prove to myself and to prove to the rest of us here that ordinary people can do a lot. I am no big sportsman or big fitness freak. I'm not doing badly. But still, people associate Everest with some sort of an exceptional level of fitness, etc., which is not really true. And I am living proof of that. And I'm not trying to be cheeky about it or not trying to be extra humble about it. I'm being very, very real. And throughout my talk, I will be very real. When I try to say something is not that complicated, doesn't mean I'm just trying to play it down. I genuinely mean it because I've seen it and I've gone through it, and I will share with you the learnings that emerged because of those experiences. So let me take support from a slideshow that I'll share, which is also the book that I have just finished doing. So these are some of the pages of the books. And so you need to, hang on, let me just put my screen on sharing, and then you need to just confirm to me that it is now working. Can you confirm that you have?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so this is actually the cover page of the book also. The photo is a little dark here, but anyway, this is also the last part of the Everest climb that morning of the 21st of May 2019. Now, last year, as many of you might have seen or seen in the news or come to know that, a lot of people died on Everest. These deaths occurred on the 21st, 22nd and 23rd of May. This is also when I was climbing. And that has an implication, that has an implication because when we were climbing, you literally are seeing a dead body after every couple of hours. It's almost like an alarm on snooze. It tells you that what you're trying to do is very, very, very dangerous. But anyway, I'll share the lesson with you. So there is a lot of text on the pages. I don't want you to bother with the text so much. Things will keep coming and going. So I will keep moving out what is not so important as far as the presentation itself is concerned. So the way I want to structure this presentation is basically run you through a slideshow, which will take about probably a little around 30-35 minutes, depending on how fast we go. And after that, I'll take 10 minutes to share with you the lessons. Now, about the lessons, essentially, when you are there, you are very, very consumed and completely focused on the climb itself, your safety, the challenges that you are facing, and there are innumerable challenges out there. So the expedition then keeps on running in your mind once you're back. And it's like a cassette, which is sort of a recording which keeps on playing over the next several weeks when you are. So once you are back from Everest, you have to be resting at home for some time to just recuperate, because the body pays a huge price for taking expeditions like this. The body essentially is consuming itself, so you have a massive amount of muscle loss, and you need to be really parked at home for at least 10 more days once you're back. And all of those times, this whole thing keeps on playing in your mind. And it's after the expedition, only in the reflection over it, that I actually sort of penned down these lessons, and then I started sharing them. And then I realized that it's a good way to actually document it in terms of a book. So that's what I'm sharing today. So when you get time, you can start to read also. But here on the left page is a little bit of a statistics around the deaths, etc. that happened on Everest. Now again, I'll keep on running back to the whole idea that Everest is just a metaphor for any complicated or any challenging expedition or project or hobby or business deal. Depending on whatever. And everything does not cause you to die, but there can be serious consequences in various ways, sometimes on personal basis, sometimes on financial basis. This graph also shows a little bit on how the whole trip actually runs. So it is actually, let me see if there is a yes. So if there is a yes, so I will be able to use so basically somewhere here, under here is the Everest base camp, and then as the line goes, it's a pretty straight run right up to the top. And but this whole climb from the bottom to the top takes about, the whole expedition is between 45 and 50 days, depending on weather. So it does require a high level of endurance to actually live in those conditions for about a month and a half and be prepared for a longer haul, because our urban lives tend to be very protected and very comfortable. And all of a sudden you are sleeping for 45 days in -25 in a nylon tent, and that itself takes a lot of energy and sort of passion from you. And eventually between these camps, so this part, the first part, the Khumbu Icefall, is the most dangerous part of the climb. It's also the most testing part of the climb. So I will show you the pictures and you will see what I mean. And then camp 1 is a very unstable camp, a lot of avalanches here. You can see between this mountain and this face, there is a lot of avalanches that come through it. I actually have videos of live avalanches. And after that, camp 2 here is a safer camp. And this is like an advanced base camp for the rest of the trip. Camp 3 out here is basically just clinging on to a very, very difficult ice slope. This is already at about 7,500 meters. So you are already sleeping with an oxygen mask out here. And then after that is a short one up to Camp 4, which is right here, which is also called the South Col. So a col is basically a shoulder which connects to two high mountains. So this is Mount Everest right here, and then Mount Lhotse is the 4th highest mountain in the world, which is about 8,516, and then there is the Everest. So this one becomes the last camp. And from here, after this, the final climb from here up to the summit is the final summit push, of which there is no camping obviously after this. So you go up to the summit and come back in the same shot And that summit push for us was 24 hours of non-stop mountaineering. We left on at 6:30 p.m. From Camp 4, which is here, 6:30 p.m. in the evening, and we reached the summit around 7:30 in the morning. And after 7:30 in the morning, we turned around. We spent about, based on the timestamps of my first and last photos, I spent a lavish 35 minutes on the summit actually. Typically, you should be spending only 10-15 minutes. But I think the greedy photographer inside me was just going berserk trying to take pictures and things. I spent more than 35 minutes, which is and after that, it took us 11 hours to get back to camp. So basically, it was a 24-hour non-stop run on one thermos of water and a couple of nuts and a couple of chocolates, because there isn't too much that you can really carry. So we will share the story as we go, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what's coming in. So then you can see this is the Khumbu, and then Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, Camp 4 and Summit. And then we'll share the pictures later. Okay, sorry, let me... Okay. So these are the lessons. I'll come back to the lessons. This is because these are pages of the book, so we will just skip some of these pictures. We had a plane crash right as we were landing in Lukla. Lukla is considered to be the most dangerous airport in the world. This is a small airstrip. If some of you have done the Everest Base Camp trek or some other trek in that area, you might have flown into this thing. But we had taken a helicopter, and as we were just trying to land, this plane actually veered off the runway and bumped into another helicopter, and 4 people actually lost their lives. And I'm like, yeah, you can die doing anything. So why don't we go and do something which is considered to be risky? Because even when you're not doing anything, you can still get killed. These are just some pictures from the trek part. I've taken the liberty to use pages from my book instead of just a slideshow. That's a beautiful sky bridge, one of the most pretty parts of the Everest Base Camp trek. So this is just the trek to base camp part. This village is called Namche Bazaar. It is the last and happening place. It has beautiful cafes and bars, and you can still shop for things and equipment. It's pretty much the last place, which is a very established place in that trek. You trek for 3 days, you get here, or you can take a chopper. And after that, this becomes like a sort of a station point for several expeditions in that area. So this is a beautiful and happening place. And then just some images. This village is a nice village called the Runjung village, which is basically a Sherpa village. And the Everest and the Edmund Hillary Foundation has done a lot of work here. So that's again a side shot, the Teng Boche Monastery. This was our group. I'll tell you about the group. This is another beautiful mountain in the area called Ama Dablam. And this is actually, it's a much smaller mountain than Everest, but it's a harder to climb mountain than Everest. So Everest is the largest mountain in the world, but it's not the most complicated mountain in the world to climb. All mountains have statistical data around casualties. So in that sense, in that scale of mountains, Everest is a relatively safer mountain. Everest casualty rate is about 4%. So let's say 1 in 25 people doesn't come back. But about 5 in 25 people come back with serious injuries, which can also stay for a lifetime. Another about 10 in 25 people come back with, frostbites and things like that, which can, stay with you for a couple of weeks. So overall, it's not that safe, but still in terms of final death ratios, it's a relatively safe mountain. But that's also because there's a lot more arrangement on Everest than other mountains. These are just some pictures from the trek. So obviously a gorgeous scenery. Look at the clouds, look at the whole, there's some night shots from one of the villages. This is actually a group. So 4 of us in this group were aiming for the Everest summit climb. Some were just doing the trek, and a couple of people were doing a smaller peak in this area. But 11 of us were in the group for the trek up to the mountain, up to EBC. This is a beautiful area where if some of you, I know some of you also belong to a book club here, and there is a gorgeous book called Into Thin Air by John Krakauer, and it's a book on the 1996 tragedy on Everest. It's a very, very, very beautifully written book, and this is a memorial of Scott Fisher, who was one of the leaders of the teams of which 16 people died in 1996. So if there are people who want to read it, it's a beautiful book. There is also a movie called Into Thin Air, which you can easily get on the internet, which you can look at. But the book is absolutely amazing because the way this guy has described Everest is incredible. And for me, I actually did not read it before I went because I did not want to go through too much of negative literature before I went. But after I came back, I read it and it was enjoyable for me because I could relate to everything that is in the book, Even at the summit, where he's waiting, where he's dying, I could relate to it firsthand because I knew what it is like. I knew where this is talking about. I knew why he's describing it that way. So for me, it was an amazing read, which was the first read I did actually once the shutdown and all happened, the lockdowns happened. But I highly recommend that book, Into Thin Air. And this is just up to the trek. This is getting into the EBC area. This is EBC. So Everest Base Camp expedition, at the time of the expedition, between basically from March up to end of May, beginning of June, is actually a buzzing village with a population of nearly 700-800 people. Because each year there are about between 350 and 400 permits that are given out by the Nepalese government for climbing Everest. Everest is a large part of the international visitor revenues of Nepal. The government charges about $11,000 per person as royalty, and another couple of thousand are paid for some common facilities like managing some of the ropes and also the cleaning and the environmental protection in this area. So per climber, the government of Nepal pretty much makes about $14,000 just as fee, and obviously everybody is spending all the money in Nepal. So it is a big revenue earner for Nepal. So when people talk about reducing the number of people and so on, I think that's never going to happen because Nepal will never give up the millions of dollars that it gets from Everest, and it pretty much has a monopoly. But anyway, we'll talk about it later if people are interested. The expedition actually starts with a big puja. This is the puja which is happening in the middle of a snowfall. Lama is called, the Sherpas and everybody have a very, very firm belief in this religious ceremony. And I have, for people who don't know this, I have also tried, I tried climbing Everest in 2014 also. It was 5 years earlier than this one. But that year was an avalanche which happened on the very first night of the climb, and 16 Sherpas died. And after that, there was a lot of trouble at base camp, and the Sherpas went on strike and all of those kind of things. And we had to essentially come back. It was like an aborted mission, which was very sad because everybody that goes there has prepared a lot and has spent enormous amounts of money and everything, but nothing could be done. We were camping there. I mean, I was there for about 28 days, out of which about 12 days were at base camp itself. But we had to eventually come back. So that climb actually starts with the puja. After the puja is done, then the Sherpas start. And the first night, it's only the Sherpas which go up to set up camp and all. And that's the reason in 2014, that night only Sherpas died because there were no members on the mountain yet. That was the first night of the climb, and only Sherpas were taking some supplies to Camp 1. And an avalanche struck in Khumbu Ice Fall, and 16 Sherpas got killed. And after that year, we had to come back. So in 2019, I thought, okay, I will give it one more shot as a birthday present to myself of turning 50. And my lead Sherpa actually motivated me, and then I prepared for about a year, and I went for this one. So this is our Sherpas preparing some of our supplies for higher camps. Gets you a sense of scale as to how much stuff has to be lugged up the mountain. It is actually hundreds of kilos of stuff which has to go because there are a lot of people, and Camp 2 kitchen has to really be there, and you have to be prepared for getting stuck at any place for several days because of weather issues, because of injury issues, because of anything. So the supply side has to be very, very generously provided for and maintained, and Sherpas get there much before we do. So it is a long expedition, and it's a very important logistical thing to arrange it. The yaks are an important means of transport there. This is a good shot I got at the base camp itself. You can see how yaks move things from up and down, and there are yaks coming in every day. So as I said, this is a village of 700-800 people, which is just living there for about 7-8 weeks. So a lot of supplies have to move in up and down. These are just some images from the shots on the life on EBC. solar power for our batteries and cells. This one we baked a cake. This is our lead Sherpa Purba. It was his birthday. These are some collection bins for the waste. This one is also, because I'll also share with you a little bit about the mountain itself. And I know the talk is about leadership and the lessons, but we'll still try and share with you interesting stuff. So this is a toilet tent on EBC, and the tent and the plastic drum under the tent is basically where you collect all the human waste. And this waste is moved out of EBC. So that way they have done a better job of maintaining the environment and sort of maintaining the cleanliness and hygiene of the place. So this is something which is commonly managed by the Nepalese government, and everybody pays about $2,500-3,000 for it for this facility. But it's important. This is actually the medical tent on Everest Base Camp. It is manned and managed by the Himalayan Rescue Association. And this is just some live pictures of how it was. There is a whole clinic, there are doctors. So there are actually international doctors who are there. And it is basically the lifeline as far as injuries and other emergencies are concerned. Fortunately, in Nepal, helicopters are quite easy. It's just a phone call away. So if you're willing to spend the money, or you have the insurance to take care of the money, a chopper can come in from Kathmandu and take you from base camp, and within 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you can be in a hospital in Kathmandu. But unfortunately, sometimes one doesn't even have the 2 hours. This thing here, the Gamo bag, it's called the Gamo bag. This is an emergency equipment, which is basically a pressurized chamber, and there is a pump, and the patient can be put inside. You can see there is a human being inside this bag right now. So you can put a man inside the bag, lock the bag, and increase the pressure. So it is like something which is like, because most of the trouble happens because of altitude. So this is like an artificial lowering of the altitude by a couple of thousand meters just by pressure. And this can be sometimes the life-saving thing that you need in a situation. These are just some images from base camp. We're doing steam because there is this thing called the Kumbu cough. When you get it, it's a very, very nasty cough that just sticks with you for all the time. And people who get it are coughing endlessly, and it's a complicated situation really. It drains you from energy. This is our camp on base camp. And this one here, the leftmost, this was my own tent. The leftmost of the third tent. This is my tent with my Everest banner with our company names. And we had arranged for this because it was a customized expedition just for the 4 of us. So we had arranged for a little more comfort accommodation in tents where we could at least stand up, because we were spending a lot of time, and I was sleeping in this tent for about 30 nights. So that is a lot of time, and if you can manage to secure a little bit of some of the basic comforts, I think it helps you a lot in the endurance part. Then the expedition starts with some rope work and some training on base camp. So you start, learning the ropes, and the Sherpas also want to see what their team knows. So this is a gorgeous picture of the whole base camp area. Now let me run you through this with the help of a pencil. Sorry. So this is base camp. If you see closely, there are these small tents out there. These yellow specks. This is basically Everest Base Camp area. This part is Khumbu Ice Fall. This is the most dangerous part of the climb, but the very first part of the climb. So it's like baptism by fire. And this is something which actually is only about 1.5 kilometers from base camp up to camp 1 here, 1.4K to be precise. And if you can finish this in about 8 hours, you are a star and you're doing very, very well. But if you can do this in 10 hours or so, you're doing okay. And if you can do this in about 12 hours, then also you are sort of passing marks and you can still go on. But there are some people who need more than that. People can take up to 14 or 16 hours. And then typically they are asked to quit the idea of the summit climb because the Sherpas and the teams assess them to be a danger to their own security and the security of others. And Khumbu is complicated, and typically about 20% of the people, and can you imagine this? And this has an implication for how people react to real life situations in business and in life in general. 20.
Aditya, we can't hear you anymore. Gaurav?
Yeah, I think so. Some problem with his connection. You can't hear him. Talk to him, I think.
Oh, okay. ठीक.
Kapil, please call him and inform him that he is not audible. Kapil? Ladies and gentlemen, I think so there's some problem at technical end. It's Mr. Adit's place. We are not able to hear him right. Let me call him up and then check what is the issue. Please bear with us for a while.
Gaurav?
Yes, Manish Bhaiya.
What Aditya is going to be doing is he's going to log out and rejoin again.
Okay.
So everybody please just be patient for a couple of minutes and we'll be good.
Okay, so what's going on here? You guys stopped seeing the screen. I don't know what happened. My internet was fine. So
I think so. We lost the connectivity somewhere when we were trying to explain that 8 hours and 14-hour shift, and people were said.
Okay. So I can run through that again. I am sorry that it will waste some time. But right now it's telling me only the host can share in this meeting. So you need to make some.
Let me change that.
Sorry about that, guys.
Okay, now you can go ahead. You can share the screen now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where are we? Where were we with this?
We were at the base camp when you started explaining
first base
that
camp.
We were here or here?
Here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I spoke quite a bit after that. So we'll go through it again. So did I explain already? Did I use the pencil and I draw it out for you?
Right. Yes, and we explain 8 hours it's good, 10 hours it's okay, 14 hours it's say no.
Yeah, so I was explaining that part, and then the pictures ahead will tell you why this is so. There are some pictures which are just so. This is like a day hike. So that photograph is taken from where I'm standing now, and you can see the base camp at the back, these yellow little tents. So these were day hikes that we would do just for acclimatization. In any direction, 2,500 feet, and then come back in the afternoon when you were basically waiting at camp. These are some more images of the area. You can see the trekkers to base camp coming in here. If you miss again, I have kept my phone in front of me this time. Just call me again so that I'm not going on and on. Okay, so this is just these are just few images. These are two veterans at base camp which were a big support to me. The gentleman in the middle, the tall gentleman, is Brigadier Ashok Ami. He has done Everest in the 80s. I don't think he made it to the summit, but he has a lot of knowledge and he's a very senior Indian mountaineer. He used to be the president of the Indian Mountaineering Foundation and then the principal of the High Altitude Warfare School, HAWS. So he was there. He was basically the expedition director for the NSG expedition, and I know him personally for many years. And he was a big source of knowledge and sort of guidance to me. And the shorter gentleman on the other side of him is Kishore. He's done Everest from both sides, north and south. He was also leading an expedition, but not climbing himself, but leading from the base camp itself. So their camp was near our camp. And we used to meet and just talk about. So these were, senior people around there who were helpful. This is Just some beautiful scenery and ice sculptures on base camp, just sculpted by sun and wind. And you can see how in the afternoon, the moment the sun goes behind the mountain, the mercury drops straight away to -20, -25. And droplets of water which were trying to make it down to the stream get arrested on the way, and you find these beautiful features that come up. So this is a closer view of the Khumbu Icefall, and that's why I was saying that when you see this, you will understand why this happens. So typically the climbing starts at night. We leave about 1:30 or 2 in the morning from base camp, and the idea is to try and get to Camp 1 by about 10 o'clock in the morning. Typically after midday, the weather turns bad. Avalanche risk increases because the sun is so strong, and generally bad weather after midday. So the climbs really happen at night. Best is to be finished with your climbing by 10 or 11 in the morning. But if you're doing a little bit later, okay, in the high altitude it becomes more dangerous. But anyway, sometimes there is no way around it. So this is the Khumbu Icefall, and you will see the images. You will see these kind of things. So this one, the one on the leftmost image, you will see these people with the stairs. This stair, the larger photograph is the close-up of that same, is the 3 ladders going up. This part was also a big traffic point on the last parts of the climb. So if you understand, let me try and get the pencil out. Okay. Here. So here is that.
Hello.
Is that ladder part? Okay. And this is basically this ladder. And going up these ladders took about 10 minutes per person. And if everybody is climbing at the same time because of the weather and weather forecast, then you can imagine that this will cause a traffic issue, which was a big issue. Fortunately, not when we went over it, but it is. These are the kind of things that are happening on Khumbu. You can see these images, and I was sharing with you that about 20% of the people actually give up the idea of climbing Everest after the first time they go through the Khumbu Icefall. That is how dangerous and threatening it is. And I also was sharing that this has a management and leadership implication, because these are people who are supposed to be preparing for a year almost. And Everest expedition on the cheaper side is between 25 and 30 lakhs per person. And with the higher cost agencies, it can be 45 up to 50 lakhs per person. All of that money is paid upfront. So you try to prepare for a year, you paid a serious amount of money upfront, and one night over the Khumbu Icefall and one climb after the base camp when you want to go back home. That's 20% of the people. That's not like a small percentage. Some of the people are also asked by the Sherpas to go because they can see that it's going to be dangerous for their own lives and for the lives of other people. But some also voluntarily leave. So this, according to me, is a big lesson in terms of how you're not prepared and you're not passionate about something. If you're taking on something like an Everest climb, you have to have that amount of awareness and passion and solid preparation behind it, that you are not going to be just giving up just because one night you had a difficult time. But eventually that happens in life. In other projects also, you would have seen that happens. So these are just some images which show how the Khumbu Icefall is. And yes, it is dangerous, yet it is difficult, but it is still just the start of the expedition. But then people also look at it in the sense that this is just the start, the first day, and this is what we are facing. So how about the next 40 days? So in some sense, for some people, it's a stop-loss decision. But for a lot of people, it's a giving up decision. Giving up too soon, I think. But that's what it is. This picture on the left is an interesting one. Here, environmental concerns, because there's a lot of chat about how environment is being harmed and so on. So every Sherpa who's coming down from the mountain has to bring about 8 kilos of waste from the mountain. And here they collect the waste and they weigh the waste. So in general, people don't leave things on the mountain, and if possible, they collect other stuff. So in the earlier part of the climbs, people are trying to keep the mountain clean, and Nepal is making an effort. And it isn't as bad or as dirty as sometimes, people who are just commenting and doing not much more than commenting speak about it. But that's not how it is. It's a better organized situation out there. Just some beautiful sights of, coming back from Khumbu. and I'll have stories to share about this part later. This is Camp 1, the first camp at about 20,000 feet. Looks like a serene place. It is beautiful, but it's a very, very dangerous spot. This whole area is not so flat as it looks, because all the crevasses and all the undulations are not visible when you're taking a picture like this. And the avalanches come from all sides. So I got a good series of pictures. This is like sometime around midday, and then this is afternoon in the same spot. You see how clouds are coming up, and in between we already had a avalanche. I'll show you the pictures of that. And then in the evening, this beautiful, beautiful sunset picture. All the mountains are behind the clouds, and the west view, which I'll also show you some views from the summit. So this is a picture of the avalanche. Okay. And this is a page from the book, and I've mentioned that it's common to have avalanches there, and it is so common that you are seeing them almost like, a couple of avalanches a day. But you have to be lucky, as well as the path is such that you don't always get trapped. But this one was coming right into camp, and I think it just got somehow sort of decided to take a left, and the camp was spared. I have a beautiful video of this avalanche. These are just some more images from Camp 1 towards Camp 2. So here, from this height, you see how the Camp 1 is not so flat, and all of these crevasses and the undulations are a little bit more obvious. And you can see people, this very small queue of people going up to Camp 2 on the right side. So this is me sitting around on Camp 1, and this is when I filmed the avalanche actually. The mountain right behind me is Lhotse, is the 4th highest peak in the world. And here on the right side, I have put some interesting pictures. The gloves that we use, they get frozen if they get left out. If they are not put inside the sleeping bag for some reason at night, and if they are left out, then they get frozen into ice by the morning because of the moisture. We have to wait. And the second picture is me sleeping. I at least kept my nostrils open, but most people completely go inside and sleep because it is kind of cold. And there is ice under the tent because it's -25, -30, and the perspiration and the respiration and the moisture in our breath itself gets frozen on the tent. And when there is wind, then the ice particles actually come off the tent, and then it's like an internal snowfall in the tent. And that is very disturbing to sleep if you have skin exposed. So that is partly the reason why people don't want to have any skin exposed at night. And here on Camp 1, you have to basically melt the ice, melt the snow and ice for water. There is no flowing water anymore. So therefore, water does become precious, but at the same time, you need a lot of water to keep yourself hydrated. So the Sherpas have a hard job of actually sustaining the whole thing. And here you can get a closer look at how the terrain actually is in Camp 1. It is not that sort of a benign terrain. It is a very dangerous place. And you are not supposed to loiter around or walk around इधर-उधर. कुछ नहीं, आप अपनी जगह पे रहो और रास्ता देख के सिर्फ रोप के साथ, or at least in pair. Because if you're just walking around alone and you fall into a crevasse or something, nobody will even know what happened, and you just go missing. So this is how the place is. This one is a beautiful shot. So this is Everest on the left, the highest mountain on the world, and then in the middle, right in the front, is Mount Lhotse. And this one, I can point out a few interesting things in this picture because this helps. So basically, somewhere around here is Camp 2, behind this little mound of ice. This part here is Camp 3. This part here is Camp 4. So basically, on the last night, it is from here to here and back. And this for us was 24 hours of a climb when we did it on the last night. 24 hours non-stop mountain climbing. And that does demand a lot of endurance and an absolutely strong mind, which will just not get distracted or discouraged no matter what is happening. So, but this gives you a sense of scale and gives you a sense of why it takes that much time. It took us some extra time because of the traffic also, but typically 20 hours is expected, unless you are a very, very strong and a very fast climber. But I was expecting about 20 hours in any case, but it took us 24. This is Camp 2. I'm sharing with you the journey because the lessons will become more relevant when you understand the journey. So this part isn't exactly leadership or the lessons, but this is important to understand what we're talking about. Camp 2 is about 22,000 feet. and is a very safe camp, completely different from Camp 1 and Camp 2. Because this is on rocks, it's not so many crevasses in the area, and that's why you see the larger tents. So this is a longer time establishment. Camp 2 has an established kitchen. We actually get hot food, and there is more stuff that is available here. It's like a advanced base camp for the higher reaches. This is Camp 2. You can see people are coming, this little ant line of people coming in. So the first time when we went straight from base camp to Camp 2, and I was absolutely exhausted. It took me like 17 hours to reach. We left around 1:30 in the night from base camp, and by the time I reached Camp 2, it was, I think, something like 5:30 or 6:30 in the evening the next day. And I was having a very, very difficult time doing this, and my Sherpa was a little upset with me. But I was doing my best. Then I realized that, the next time I'm going to go this, I will definitely take a break at Camp 1. Because if you keep draining yourself out of energy, then for the later altitudes and the later days, you will have more difficulty. So this was the first rotation. The second rotation and the final summit climb, we took a stop at Camp 1. Gorgeous image of Camp 2. These were our tents at the very end. I think people are entering and exiting. But can somebody confirm that I am audible? Everything is working fine?
Yeah, everything is working fine. You've been narrating it so well. It's been wonderful.
Okay, awesome. So if there is a problem, just give me a call. I've kept my phone in a place I can see if there is a problem. Because I don't want to keep talking to nobody.
Sure, definitely.
This is a gorgeous picture, and let me explain. Okay, I'll explain in the next picture because otherwise it will take too long. These are just some imagery from the Camp 2, and you can see how beautiful it is. And obviously these are very difficult to reach places, and without a lot of arrangement and a lot of logistics behind it, you can't really go around. This is our team of Sherpas. This is the kitchen at Camp 2. Camp 2 has a lot more establishment, and this is our lead Sherpa team who runs first. They go before we go, and they were going a day earlier to set up Camp 3 and sort of move some oxygen cylinders to Camp 3 and Camp 4. So these guys are tough. They can go from Camp 2 to Camp 4 in one shot. But when we go, we have to stay in Camp 3 a night, and then only go Camp 4. So this is the way up from Camp 2, and now you are in your Himalayan suits. And somewhere in the next slope, we have to start using oxygen sometime soon. This is a view of the Lhotse face. So you can see the little ant line of people going up towards Camp 3. And Mount Lhotse is the mountain just under the sun, where you can see the peak. The little you can't really see the peak, but you can see the top of it. So that's the kind of scenery. This is Camp 3. I will show you some other pictures. So here you're pretty much perched on the ice slope. Let me take help of another here. This photograph. Okay. So here you will see that basically this ice slope is basically this one. Okay. Let me explain how this works. So that ice slope is basically this part, which is just go straight up, and the Camp 3 is somewhere here. So as you can see, there is no camping site. You just basically, remove the ice, and you somehow pitch tents, and you hope that they will stay in place till the morning. Even if you have to go to the toilet, you have to be roped up. You can't move around. You just have to lie down, let the night pass, not the whole night. Somewhere in the middle of the night, we start walking ahead. But this is where you can see Camp 3. I'll show you some more pictures. So that's the climb. It's a straight up vertical, about 1200 feet. It's called the Lhotse face. It is also another big, what should I call it, endurance test or mental toughness test, because now you are very, very high altitude, 24,000 feet. And every step is a huge thing. There is no amount of training. There is no simulation. It is very difficult to imagine how one walks around at 24,000 feet, and then to climb something that vertical non-stop takes a completely different mental and physical attitude. But when you are there, so you can see in this picture, let me point this out to you. So here, this is Camp 2. So we walked over this thing. to here, which is kind of a gentle slope. And after that, there is this vertical straight ice wall straight up. So this part from here up to here, which is the first tent, and there are tents for this, can take about 6-7 hours of climbing. And you have to go straight non-stop, because obviously time is limited. Conditions are dangerous and you're very high altitude. So this is something which everybody is scared of, and people have this lotse face pe ja raha hai, lotse face pe jana hai. But eventually these are lessons where, you know, when you get into these things, you just focus on what has to be done and you go step by step by step. And the lesson that I'll share with you is that whole idea of one step at a time is to not keep on thinking about the big looming picture. You don't have to gobble it up in one big jump, right? You just have to take one step, one step, one step. And if you don't focus too much on how difficult it is and how complicated it is and how dangerous it is, and you just focus on where you can put the next step and the next step and the next step, you know, after some time you're done with it. And this has a massive application in life in a lot of different things, where we try to see the end point, and the end point can keep on intimidating us or keep on telling us that we can't do it. But, you know, all of that decision you've already taken. This is not the time to think whether you can do or you can't do. This is the time to get on with it. And this is, you know, an important lesson in life, that once you're prepared and you're passionate about something and you've jumped into the fray, then you get on with the job. Don't keep evaluating your chances all the time, and don't keep getting, you know, all the negative thoughts which are there, because there will always be. So let me come back to those lessons, but these are examples that I wanted to share where you see these things coming very, very live. So here you can see Camp 2 is right here. This is Camp 2 area. This is Camp 3 area. This is about 8 hours or so, 8-9 hours of a climb. And after that to Camp 4, and then to the summit. So these are obviously dangerous places. These are difficult circumstances. But eventually everything gets done. You just have to see. This is a closer view of the Camp 3, and you can see how tents are just sort of, you know, embedded into the ice face. So there is very little snow here. It's mostly blue ice. This is all permanent ice on that altitude, and that is why it's very hard ice. So you can only walk with crampons, and you have to be roped up all the time with your safety anchors and everything. And night shot. This is when we are leaving from Camp 3 to Camp 4, probably 2:30 or 3 in the morning. And you can see some headlamps coming up in the comb below. And this is just a moonlight shot. So you can see how strong the moonlight is. The shadow of the moonlight is very, very sharp. And basically leave around this time and try to reach Camp 4 sometime 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, because the days are extremely windy and you want to be in a safe place before it starts to go like that. This one I managed to take a picture of myself and Camp 3 in the background. This is a part called the yellow band on the Everest. So the yellow band is a rock face. So even at that altitude, it's like exposed rock face. And because your shoes already have the crampons, which are meant to be walking on ice and have the grip for ice. So when you start walking on rock and which is kind of straight up vertical, then it does cause a lot of problems. So yellow band is a piece. In this picture on the side, you can see that this is whole yellow band. Why it's called the yellow band? It runs actually across the mountain in all directions, and is a little bit of an impediment to cross. But everything gets crossed one step at a time. This is an amazing photo. Somewhere around here, I actually ran out of oxygen. And we were just climbing, and all of a sudden, my Sherpa had left to Camp 4 because he said, it's closed now, you can come in and I'll go and set it up. And I said, yeah, fine, that's okay. And he left, uske 10 minutes baad mera oxygen. I was like, why is it become so difficult for me to walk? And then I looked at the pressure gauge and I had no oxygen in the tank anymore. And then you suddenly begin to panic. But many such things, one night I was climbing over the Khumbu ice fall, and all of a sudden, whole of my left leg went through the ground ice into the water below. And my left leg was completely soaked in icy cold water. I mean, people pulled me out of the hole, but eventually I had like one leg completely wet. So all of those were lessons which I will come to, but I'm just sharing with you as they happen. So you see them and where they are happening, and then what are the lessons around it. So this one here, I can also mark for you how it actually works. So somewhere here is Camp 4, like right behind this sort of a curve. And here, this little piece which looks like the small little mound is actually got 80 feet of a vertical ice wall, which you have to then go over. You start from Camp 4 and then you go over this thing. Then you go over this into this area and over the rocks and the ice, and then you take a right. This is called the balcony. This right here is the balcony and and then you go over this part to the summit, and the summit is actually somewhere behind. It's not really here. Summit is not visible here. So that's pretty much the last part of the climb. Took us 13 hours to get to the top, about 11 hours to come back on the way back from that part. And obviously there are more pictures, but this gives you an overview. And this is an important lesson here, that this whole idea of a scale of our ambition or scale of our goal. So the lesson that I've worded it as, the scale should not scare us. That means if you take on something huge, and Everest is the world's biggest mountain, and you have innumerable amount of books and videos and movies around the tragedies and around the accidents, around how many people have died, and you can look at YouTube videos. There is a YouTube video called The Dark Side of Everest. It has such unpleasant visuals of dead bodies and all kind of crap. So it's easy to get demotivated by the scale and the dangers of the thing. And this picture actually shows this is the last part. So Everest, you begin to look at Everest about 40 days in advance from Namche Bazaar, and you are walking towards it day by day by day, and it keeps getting almost like larger and larger. And the last and final night is still this much is left. It is still a huge threat in your face. It is massive. But that is the lesson, that the scale of our goal should not be scaring us. How do we overcome that? There are other ways around it. But the first step obviously is to not be scared of scale. So this one here, you can see this is a little line of people coming up. So this is from where the previous picture, and I look down, turn around, and then you see the line of people that is coming up from behind. And you can see that there are quite a sizable number of people. And this circle is around Camp 3. These are actually our tents on Camp 3. That the red circle, this must be from a previous presentation, but now it's there. And then you can see the people and the line of people. This is above, and this is the yellow band. You can see the yellow line of the stone here. It seems very small, but it takes quite a while to negotiate the yellow band. Now this is Camp 4, and I have called the chapter "Living It Up in the Death Zone." This is 26,000 feet. So after that spot, you are camped in Camp 4. You can see these Camp 4. These are small tents. This is a picture which I've actually taken on my way back from the summit. So very lucky shot, rare photographs, because it's typically all clouded. It was mostly crowded and blizzard, and just opened up for a few minutes, and I got this shot. This mountain on the top at the back is Lhotse, and I'm coming down from Everest towards Camp 4. So this is Camp 4. This is me actually sitting where my oxygen ran out. So I tried to walk, but it was not advised, and I was finding it very difficult. So we had to send somebody over for a Sherpa to bring a new cylinder of oxygen. And I was lucky that I was close enough that I got a new cylinder of oxygen in about 45 minutes. And then I resumed walking. Otherwise, it would be a little more complicated. But this is a good, so this is a view from Camp 4 towards the western Coombe. I have marked Camp 2 at the arrow. If you see bottom middle, that's Camp 2, and then Camp 3, and then Camp 4. So this view, now you already are at about 8,000 meters. You are higher than most of the mountains in the world. And you can see these ranges in the distance. And you can see these gorgeous views, which are, visible. And then you have the next night of the battle. So this is Camp 4. Close and personal. So Camp 4 is a little bit of a messy camp because people have to drop some things here, and it's very hard to take things back from here. So gorgeous sunset from Camp 4 at 26,000 feet. And another thing that came in as a challenge last minute to us, the night that we reached here was actually the 20th night, and that night was so windy. It was so windy that we couldn't have taken it up, and we had to decide to stay another extra night in Camp 4. So these were unexpected things, your leg going through the ice, or there was one of the ice falls in between Camp 1 and Camp 2. I was like halfway up the ice wall, and then I had no energy to pull myself up. I was literally begging my Sherpa मुझे नीचे उतारो, नीचे तो आप जा ही नहीं सकते, आपका जुमार सिर्फ ऊपर ही जाए. So I was literally just dangling there for 15 minutes, gathered some energy back, and then climbed up the wall again. But these things happen, and this last minute thing of having an extra night in Camp 4 is an extremely dangerous, because you are in the death zone, you are always on oxygen, and your body is essentially eating itself up. So you are not supposed to be spending extra time here. But that night the weather was such that it just seemed very, very dangerous to try and go up the mountain. So we had to take a call to stay an extra night in Camp 4 and then go the next night. So we were actually camping in Camp 4 for about more than 30 hours before we started going onwards, which is sometimes dangerous, but for us anyway, God was kind. Here, if you see the arrow about 3 o'clock position in the picture, these are 4 people going up the mountain. Can you see the people? I will point them out again. Like right here. The arrow is marked and showing 1 person. So that is the scale. I was talking about scale of the mountain. This is the final camp. There is no more camping. There is nothing. Yahan se go to the top, come back, one shot. You make it or you don't make it, but this is it. So that is the scale at the last time. At the last day, you are exhausted. You have been on the mountain for 43 days, and you can't eat or sleep for the last 3-4 days. But this is what is left, and you have 1 night to do it. So there are no easy options on the metaphorical Everest or the real Everest. This is actually getting very close to the summit. So there are some more pictures that I will share with you here. This one, I will give you a couple of seconds to read this because these are my very thoughts. So this is me. You can see my eyebrows, even my eyebrows have ice. And there's ice all over me. And then I noted down some of my thoughts as I was getting very close to the Everest summit. I'll give you a second to read it because it will be better than me trying to recite it, and I'll have a sip of water in between. So I hope some of you have been able to read this or who were interested. So this does become a battle of the head and the heart at the summit, because for that minute you feel like I can, there are people coming and going. But eventually you know that on your way back is when most of the accidents happen, when most of the deaths have occurred on Everest. So you have to take time for that. These are some images of the night climb toward the summit. This is the first balcony where we change our oxygen cylinders. These are just some more images of the night climb. In this image, you can see the slope. You see the headlamp at the bottom. Then you see the headlamp at the top. You can see how vertical it is. So you have to keep yourself, obviously going with the ropes. And just one step at a time, one step at a time. This is when the moonlight is kind of going away and the little light of dawn is coming up. You've been climbing through the night. And you know that still many, many hours are left before you will actually reach the summit. And look at that gorgeous. So this is Mount Makalu, the one I have marked here, another 8,000 meter peak. So a beautiful sunrise. Look at those sights. This is from about south summit of the Everest, about 8,700 meters. This one here is a climber trying to help another collapsing fellow. And you can see right at the edge, about 10,000 feet down into the Rongbuk Glacier. And you can see that here it is a few inches here or there, and you will never be seen again. And And this is at South Summit. This guy, I remember this guy was literally crying and he didn't know which way to go. And he, people begin to lose their mind because they are exhausted and they get very, very scared. Or if they have a hypoxia situation where they have a lack of oxygen in their brain and they don't know what they're talking about, they don't know where they're going. And it becomes very hard to even explain to somebody what to do and what not to do. And then people do get killed, unfortunately, in these circumstances. And look at that sunrise. I've called it the most difficult to see sunrise in the world, which is from nearly the top of Mount Everest. But I have to tell you that when you're climbing at night, the early rays of the sun, and when the sun begins to show up, you suddenly begin to feel very secure. You feel, you almost have a false sense of warmth. And all of these things have implications for our metaphorical Everest in life. There are things where you have, you've gone through the night. शाम को रात को 6:30 बजे आप चले हो, 6:30 बजे उजाला था. Then you went through the night and it became dark, and now it's becoming lit up again. And you are still not near the summit. You still have another 2-3 hours. That shocking photo that is there, this is the image. You can see that is that image. This is the spot where I've taken picture to the east, to the right of the sunrise, and this is the climb ahead. And it is getting only harder and harder. So that's the image when you see from South Summit. It's called the Cornice Traverse. And then somewhere in the middle is the Hillary Step. And then you can almost see that the summit is not that far. But at the same time, it's not that easy. This is still about 2 hours away. And you've been going for 11 hours. So this is a gorgeous west side view. Sun is coming from the east and you can see different mountains. Beautiful thing. This is actually the traffic jam around Hillary Step to the left. And on the right is the summit, which is just a few meters away. So this is also a good write-up, which is my thoughts there, the proverbial last mile. I'd been climbing in what is officially the death zone for 13 hours after we left South Pole at 6:30 p.m. And the body begins to shut down beyond 8,000 meters, and you got to get out of there ASAP. So I've shared the story about how it was. We had to spend an extra night, and then infamous traffic kept us there. So, that's why when I reached the summit, and that's why I said that when you get there, you realize that there has to be something which is protecting you, because this was not a normal situation that you just managed through. You were not on your own. It is stupid to think that it was just you. It's a lot of other things. This is almost from the summit. People have now reached the summit, the last few meters towards the summit. And you can see that the clouds are coming in from the left. So after 20 odd minutes, there was almost no visibility. So in that sense, also, we were very blessed and very lucky that, otherwise you can get to the summit and see nothing. People who reached after about 8:30 or 8:40 that morning wouldn't have seen much. So we were lucky that we reached at a time when there were gorgeous views. Look at that clarity of the view from the top of the world. And this is me standing on the summit. This red flag under my elbow is actually the summit point of Everest. And I have all the water bottles inside my Himalayan suit. So we had the thermos flask and in the bag, and the water bottles are kept inside the Himalayan suit to keep them warm. But on the way back, when I tried to take out the water bottle to try and drink from it, it was all ice. So even though the water bottle was inside my Himalayan suit next to my body, and the water was hot when I put it in, it was all frozen into solid ice. So there was no more water. Just have to keep going. But eventually, this is at the summit itself. This is me and my Sherpa. This is me at the summit. And this is again something that I want you guys to read. My goal was to prove to myself, ordinary people like me can do anything with preparation and passion. My learnings could apply to any serious projects, which could be a metaphorical Everest, even the project of life itself. So I would say go for your Everest, my friend, whatever that happens to be. There ain't no mountain too high we cannot climb. So these are the lessons which I'll come to one step at a time, without being scared of scale, using the power of focus, and expecting to deal with the unexpected. And, of course, you have to bear in mind that time is oxygen and we should be friends with fear. So these are the 7 lessons. We will come to it. It is just the view from the summit, and look at how lucky we have been to get that blue sky from the top of the world and get that clarity of view. It was only in the west direction we had this clarity. From the east, the clouds are already coming. Unfortunately, I have only one side, and in the book I have marked many of the mountains that are here in this view. When you see the book, there are quite a few important mountains which are actually visible in such a clear view from the top. And on the way, it was all blizzard and snowing and ice, and this is just a picture we got. There are very few pictures of the way back because this is how the weather was. You can see completely snowed out. And this picture to the right, I'm just waiting on a vertical drop. This is my boot. And somewhere here, my Sherpa actually left me and he just walked away towards camp. And the last 6 hours, I was just alone with my last bottle of oxygen. And I did not realize that he's actually left. So there was again that lesson about expecting to deal with unexpected stuff. So this is where, he just walked through this crowd. I couldn't have walked through this crowd. These guys can maneuver. We can't. We are just regular folks. So you can see how it is a vertical drop and people are waiting because after that, the rock fall is also a vertical drop. And when it is just snow, you can move faster because your boots have crampons. But when it's rock and snow, it's a trouble because then the boots don't get a grip on the rock. And it becomes kind of complicated and you don't have that much energy left. So this is towards the end when the Sherpa is already gone and I'm just coming out with the last few guys. And this is that picture that we already shared. I'm just trying to speed up because we've taken a lot of time to get to this spot. So this is me actually back to camp. The timestamp is exactly 18 hours and 29 minutes. So it was amazing how it was exactly 24 hours that we left 8:30 the previous day and coming back 6:30 the previous day and 6:30 the next day. And you can see the ice on my body and on my suit and everywhere. And even when I came back, it was a bad situation. There was nobody. My Sherpa had disappeared. Hardly any food. It was just a little bit of a mismanaged situation. So this is on the way back towards Camp 2. These are choppers which come to Camp 2 to take people out because a lot of people need emergency evacuation by the time they are back from this area. And this is just me very, very happy that the climb is done. I've come back. You can see my suit is actually torn. I managed to put a crampon into my own suit. Now the lessons. So this is the crux of the expedition, but the crux of what I wanted to talk about. But it was important for me to be able to share with you the expedition, and it did take some time, but at least you now know what we're talking about. So the first lesson that I think is very important for all of us to remember is that if you want performance, it takes both preparation and passion. Now, why do I say both? Because we see a lot of times we say we're very passionate about this one and we're very passionate about that one. We're not doing much about it. You can be passionate and then what? Passion तो बहुत easy है बोलना मैं तो बड़ा passionate हूँ, and then आप कर क्या रहे हो उसके बारे में? It depends on that, right? If you want to actually do something about something and you want to do real achievements or real goal setting, then you have to prepare hard. And that preparation takes a lot of discipline on a day-to-day basis because you're not looking like you're making much progress every day. So when you don't have progress to see every day, but you still have to keep on doing it every day, that takes passion. And that's why that passion drives us from the preparation. And later on, when you are on the mountain, when you are in the middle of it, when you are in the middle of the battle, time to prepare is already over. And the preparation is on the 3 fronts. There is physical, mental, and technical. Physical you can do is the easiest part. 9 mahine, 10 mahina, jo bhi lagta hai, you can kind of build up your capacity. But the mental part, and I've written that in the book, it's climbing mountains, they say just 2% aptitude and 98% attitude. However, I have to say that the 2% aptitude doesn't mean it's a very small thing. It is the key which opens the door. So sometimes, you have to also see what comes first. Attitude is something which you will only use when you come to that crux situation, right? But before that, you have to have the aptitude, and the aptitude has to come by preparation. It has to come through experience and preparation. If you don't have experience, then by a lot of preparation, listening to other people, following what they say, and making up your own mind about things. So when you are in the middle of the battle, then again your preparation and passion are the ones that actually drive you through. Because of your preparation, you have confidence. So these are not abstract ideas that हाँ मैंने बहुत prepare किया, मैं बड़ा passionate हूँ. खाली बोलने से नहीं होता है. Because again, in any of the larger projects, any serious thing, we all have done serious things. And we all know when we succeeded, when we did not. And if we're really honest about it, and if we really look inside our hearts, mostly it is these two, either of these two, which were not in place. And we kept saying things and we kept justifying our things. But if both of these things were in place, then chances are very high that you will get through whatever you want to get through. That was lesson one. Lesson number 2 is what I've called the power of focus, And the idea, in the difficult parts, like when you were crossing those ladders or you were crossing places where there is hardly like 6 inches of a spot to keep your foot. Otherwise, you are just next to a vertical drop. Now, you can look at the 6 inches or you can look at the drop. If you look at the 6 inches and focus where you can put your foot and go on, you'll go through. But if you look at the drop and then you अगर गिर गए तो, अगर रस्सी हिल गई तो, अगर ये हो गया तो, अगर वो हो गया तो, A, there is no time for that bullshit. 2, it doesn't help in any way, right? So if you have to be so focused that everything else is like that अर्जुन की आंख, अर्जुन को मछली की आंख वाला एग्जाम्पल हमारे तो बहुत सारे mythological important documents में भी वही बात है. But here there are these two important goals. So one is the general direction, you're going towards the summit, but you also have to have the focus to take the very next step. And there will always be things which are difficult, things which are easy, and things change. Not every time everything is not going to remain difficult all the time. But in the most dangerous parts of our projects, that power of focus to focus on what I can do, the focus of where I can step, the focus where I will not die. There are 10 places you will die, but there's also one spot where you will not die, you will go through it. If we can just focus there, we don't have to be too scared about it. So that is the power of focus, that is the lesson. And the scale, I already shared this lesson with you, the scale should scare us. So, obviously, here as I have been saying again and again, it's a metaphorical thing that we are Everest climb कर रहे हैं. But कुछ भी आप और कर सकते हैं. We all have things that we have done in life and we take up things. And there can be business, non-business, Even somebody saying I want to lose 20 kilos of weight is like climbing an Everest only, mentally. And there's nothing magical about losing weight or, there is, exactly what has to be done. And if you do it, it will happen. But if you're not going to do it, you're trying to fake it, or you are too tempted by every little thing, then naturally, important things like Everest, etc. can't be done. So the scale itself cannot be scaring us. And I have shown you even till the last day, Everest is in your face. And I've written in my book, it never lets you forget who is in charge. Everest पे आपकी कोई भी value नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं. People are dying, and most people, a lot of the people who are very experienced, बहुत बोलते रहते थे पूरे महीनों तक, सुन के भी हम लोग थोड़ा परेशान हो गए थे. Most of those people never made it. And people like us who were like nobodies, we made it. Because A, we were not so fat-headed about it, but internally we were kind of pretty strong about it. But we were also scared that what will happen, and that is something which I have covered later in one of those lessons. But let me first share this one, which I think is the most important lesson. If there was one lesson that one had to just take away and completely internalize, is the power of one step at a time. Now, everybody knows this. None of the lessons that I've been talking about are very high-fi things that you've never heard about it before or anything like that. But one step at a time is a very simple formula for breaking through the most complicated situations. No matter what we are dealing with, there is merit in being able to break it up into smaller pieces, not get overwhelmed by looking at the whole thing in one shot and trying to say ये कैसे होगा, ये तो होगा ही नहीं, ये हो जाएगा, इसमें तो वो हो जाएगा. कुछ नहीं होता है if you keep on going one step. And the way that the night that we were climbing, the summit night, every step is between 5 and 7 deep breaths. Every single step. एक कदम से दूसरा कदम रखने के बारे में पूरा 5 it was like literally going through, you were dragging into the oxygen mask as if उसमें से कुछ निकल ही नहीं रहा है. But the whole night, the idea is to take one step and not keep thinking about कितना बच गया है. जो बचा है वो कम नहीं होगा हमारे सोचने से. But if we keep going for it, at some point the mind flips. So my experience, and you guys, when we start talking after the presentation, my experience is that this whole idea, I don't believe in this well begun is half done. That's bullshit. Because we all know that we begin a lot of things, but we never get done with those things. And when we begin, it sounds like it's well begun only. The real game starts after the first 30-40% and the middle 40%. So the first 40 is easy because you were beginning and you were enthusiastic and all of that. And the last 20% is also not that complicated because you can see that you're almost there and then you get energized by the fact that you've almost done it. But in between is when projects fail. In between is when we give up. In between is when we actually lose sight and lose the energy and lose the optimism when we are between the 40 and 80 point. आधा ही हुआ है, अभी तो इतना सारा बचा है, अभी तो कैसे होगा, हमें समझ में नहीं, all of those things. But this simple key about one step at a time, just going into it, just nibbling away at it, just chipping away at that mountain one by one. And before you realize, you actually turn the corner. Now, this one is an extremely important thing. I shared with you some of the examples, like the oxygen running out, or my leg going through the ice, or me getting stuck on the wall, or my Sherpa leaving me alone on the way back. So there will be things that will happen. And again, it doesn't matter what project or what idea we are pursuing. There will always be stuff which is not expected. So there is a nice line about planning, When you plan, you also have to plan for the things which will not go according to plan. But that plan is actually a mental attitude issue because you can't plan for what you don't know what will happen. Right? The only thing you can plan is that something will happen, and when it happens, I will know that okay, कुछ ना कुछ तो ऐसे होना ही था, तो now this is the thing. Okay, let's deal with it. Mentally, we are more like अच्छा किसी ने आना था, कौन आना था पता नहीं, but आपको मालूम था कि कोई आएगा. So when they come in, when they knock your door, you're not flabbergasted, अभी कौन आ गया, क्या हो गया, like you're not panicking. So when unexpected things are happening, we have to expect that some things will happen which were not expected in the beginning, but assume and expect things will happen and we can deal with it. But if you're expecting to deal with the unexpected stuff, then you begin to look at it in a very different way. That in some ways you are not panicking, you are not threatened, you are not getting nervous, or you're not suddenly assuming कि ये तो अब बर्बाद ही हो गया. So that is an important lesson with Everest. As I've shared, Everest is something which brings the whole life into a couple of weeks. Many things become obvious to us over 5 years, 10 years, and sometimes we can't put the whole picture together. But an expedition like Everest in 6 weeks, it gives you a whole picture of life in terms of various ways. Now, these are the 2 lessons which I added later on after the first few talks that I delivered. Initially, I had only 5. Because everybody was like, आपको डर नहीं लगता, आपको डर नहीं लगता. डर of course लगता है यार, किसको डर नहीं लगता. डर ना लगना है bullshit. Somebody says डर नहीं लगता, they're lying. Or they are completely stupid. So fear is a useful emotion to have. And when I say make friends with fear, what I really mean is that there are things that we should be scared of. There are things which are genuine threats and you can't wish them away. But how you deal with them makes a big difference. So if you accept that there is stuff to be afraid of, there is stuff to be fearful of, then you begin to prepare for it differently. You prepare in advance. I was scared of frostbites. I prepared for that in advance. I talked to senior mountaineers. I talked कैसे मुझे करना है, क्या ध्यान रखना है. And the whole night, that night, I was very, very, very watchful. Very watchful. 4 of us in our team had gone for the Everest. One guy, one of the strongest guy, he didn't make it. He had to come back from Camp 4. The other 2 made it. One of the guys was shady, वो थोड़ा बदमाश था, उसका पक्का नहीं है मैं, but anyway he claims he made it. But both of them were back in Kathmandu in the hospital for a couple of days. many people, I gave you the statistics, out of 25 people, at least 15 people come back with injuries, fraud bite, or some don't come back. But the point is this, that if you are very honest about what is there to be afraid of, and you are afraid of it, then that means that you have to accept and prepare, and therefore help that fear. Help yourself to deal with that fear in advance. So when the thing actually begins to happen in the middle of it, that time you already have a plan, or you already have a thought about it. You've not wished it away. You've not thought कि मुझे तो होगा ही नहीं. अब जैसे भी कोरोना भी चल रहा है, अच्छा मुझे तो होगा ही नहीं. I also got COVID. ठीक है, हो गया. Now what's the big deal? Go through it, right? So making friends with fear is what I mean, is that there are, no matter what you're doing in a project, so it's not about having a baseless bravado about it. कोई चाटगिरी से ये वाला काम होने वाला नहीं है. This is not something. You have to have every tool in your emotional kit, and with the preparation and passion, with the focus, not being scared of scale, and still taking one step at a time. But still, there is stuff to be afraid of. But if we want to be friends with it and we prepare for it, and when it happens, then we deal much better. That's the meaning of this lesson to me. And last but not the least, the most obvious, time is oxygen. Why would I say that in the context of life? Because in the climb, we all have 4 cylinders of oxygen. Once you've left camp, you have 4 cylinders. Now, if you are not moving, or you're taking too much rest, or you're wasting too much time getting scared on a tough portion or something like that, then oxygen तो चल रही है. आप चल रहे हो नहीं चल रहे, आपकी oxygen तो चल रही है. And at some point, the oxygen will get over, and there is nothing you can do. On the final summit section, oxygen is over, game is over. So basically, you have to make it before you run out of oxygen. And if you connect it back to life, time is the same thing. Time, limited time है, fixed time हमारे पास सबके पास है. हम productive हैं या नहीं हैं, हम कुछ achieve कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं, time तो चलते ही जा रहा है. And at some point, that time will be over. And if we are not back in camp, and if we are not done with the finishing line, then, well, that's it. So time in life is like oxygen on the Everest. And in a matter of a few days, if you connect the two things, then you can easily see why I am saying time is oxygen. In the longer term, ऐसे हमें रोज time का value इतना समझ नहीं आ रहा. But after 10 years, when you look back, it's like 1 cylinder of oxygen is 10 years in life. So let's say after the first 20-25 years, when you really begin to get on with things, 1 decade is almost like 1 cylinder of oxygen. You've got 4 decades of your prime time, and there are 4 cylinders of oxygen on Everest too. So I have equated that, and I have internalized that as my lesson number. This is just another story. These are some pictures from home. Mom saying goodbye. This is like before I left, and this is after I came back. So at the airport, and Papa with his champagne bottle. This is my friend from 2014 expedition, Pradeep Sahu. We were together at Turkey. Him and his wife are both mountaineers. They went back in 2015. That year was the earthquake in Nepal. Many people died. Then these people went again in 2016, both husband and wife, Sahu and Chetna. So in this picture, you can see Sahu is on the top left, and Chetna is the lady in the pink jacket. They are husband and wife mountaineers. They both made it to the summit. Chetna had a big difficulty in coming back. She lost her fingers and toes, and she's one of the high altitude rescue stories in the history of Everest. But unfortunately, this friend of mine, Sahu, he died 6 months after he climbed Everest. So 19th May 2016, he climbed Everest, and 19th November, we lost him. Just coming back from a jog, and straight away, ऐसे ही बैठे living room में he just died. But I think this is a man who is responsible for me to even go this far. He made me believe it can be done. We've done many mountains together, and I've dedicated a whole page to him in the book. These are just some media things, and a lot of the media was around this how 50 years age and 50 years and 50 years, which was a little funny, but that's what it was. So this is Anuba and Kalpana. Many of you know them, my wife and daughter. They came to Kathmandu to receive me. and they have these funny T-shirts which says Everest is no problem. Everest no problem. And this is the actual certificate that the Nepalese government gives you for having climbed. It's a very humble looking certificate. It's almost like a little thing. When you get it, you realize, this is the thing, but this is how it actually looks. And it is a part of some file somewhere. I don't know where it is. So that's it. I'll go back to not sharing the screen. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. You've been very patient. And I know that I took a little longer than I thought I will, but when you get into the flow of sharing that story, it becomes hard to decide when to stop. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there are any comments or things that, or any thoughts that you want to share, I'll be more than delighted.
Definitely we'll have a question answer session, but before that, let me tell you, the way you narrated the entire story of this expedition, I think so everyone who's listening to it very effectively can close his eyes. Oh, this is base camp 1. Now we have to climb the fall in 8 hours, and then we go to camp 2, and then it's a camp 3 which is on a slope, and then we have to go to base camp 4, and from there we have to up and down to the peak and come back. I think so. It's been so mesmerizing that it's a kind of a virtual reality that we are going through the entire Everest trip. It's been so wonderful.
Actually, one of the management consultants in Gujarat has made a whole virtual experience out of this, which she's selling to corporates as a summit climb out of my pictures and experience. And now she's even selling it internationally to American clients. They charge like $500 per person to go through a virtual game which lasts for a couple of hours, and they actually do the whole thing. So it is a good sort of a leadership thing, and it also creates that whole behavioral experiences about how getting ready at it's easy to say 1:30 बजे रात को जाना है बेस कैंप से. 1:30 बजे रात को निकलना है बेस कैंप से is a tough thing to do. Getting out of your sleeping bag, by the time you put on your boots, सांस फूल गई होती है आपकी. -25 में ऐसे कर रहे, कांप रहे होते हैं हाथ, और जूता भी पहन नहीं पाते हो आप ठीक से. And there's a very strict things. 1:30 बजे you have to be in the kitchen tent, and the kitchen tent actually wakes up. They make you the omelette. You grab your cup of tea. You have a little sort of something to carry, and that's it. By 2 o'clock you should be on your way. But trying to go into a sleeping bag at 7:30 or 8 in the evening, and then lying there half the time, not being able to sleep in the anxiety and everything, and then eventually you fall asleep. तब तक अलार्म बज जाता है कि 1:30 बज गया है, अभी उठो. So, those things are very easy to say here because we're just talking about it. But when you are actually trying to leave at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a completely different thing that goes on here. You're like, kahan phas gaye hain?
I have one quick question. When you're about to reach the 4th camp, like 4th site,
you have to speak a little closer. I can't hear you so clearly, Gaurav.
Okay. Now I'm audible.
Yeah, you're better.
Okay. Now, what happened when you were about to reach the base camp 4th and your oxygen went out? What was the first thing that came in your mind, and how you planned to gain the?
See, I think that's where I shared the last 2 lessons, right? So there is an expect to deal with the unexpected. So things happened. What had actually happened was my mistake. So first of all, it was a mistake. A lot of things happened. So the previous day, when we started going up the Lhotse face, my oxygen mask had a big leak. So it was like पूरा एकदम 1-1.5 मिनट के लिए पूरा उसमें से ऑक्सीजन निकला. शेरपा ran, we closed it. So we had to have in our mind कि हमारा 1-1.5 मिनट का लीक हम कल कर चुके. Secondly, it's a part of the training to keep looking at the pressure gauge all the time. Now, when my Sherpa left me, that time we should have checked the pressure gauge. We didn't because we are close enough, and you feel up to हो गया almost. But had we checked the pressure gauge, we would have seen कि खत्म होने वाली है. It was our mistake, we didn't see. Because it should not be a surprise. When I was coming back, the last day when I had no Sherpa left and I was coming on my own, that day I was very, very mindful. So in some way, if you think about it, again, I'm just trying to relate it with management and life. This missing of oxygen on the 2 days before made me much more conscious of it on the final climb. But then I was very particular about checking my oxygen, my pressure gauge all the time. And also I knew कि ठीक है परेशानी होती है but manage हो जाता है. Obviously you can't walk all of a sudden, but if you go slowly or you can wait, it's not like you're going to die in 10 minutes. So in retrospect, it was a good experience to have, But at that time, yes, I was trying to walk, and I was having difficulty in walking. And then there were other Sherpas who said, "आप walk मत करिए, पास में कैंप है, आप यहाँ पे वेट करिए, because अगर आप walk करेंगे तो आपको ज़्यादा रिस्क है। पहुँच तो आप जाओगे, ऐसा नहीं है कि आप पहुँच नहीं पाओगे, लेकिन it's not required. We'll get somebody. You just sit here, and then sitting and waiting is not so difficult. Because walking without oxygen is much more taxing than just sitting and waiting without oxygen. So it wasn't too much of a panic, but it could be. It was lucky that I was so close to camp. You know, this could be middle of the night. This could be something else. You have only one oxygen equipment. If something goes wrong with the equipment, your expedition is over. You have to just somehow not get killed and get back. But I was fortunate that this happened pretty close to camp, and that made me much more conscious the next night and when the real game was happening. So that was a good thing in retrospect. But that time, yeah, it became
So again a good learning lesson that you need to keep checking all your parameters constantly.
Yeah, the basic dashboard you have to see.
आप चेक
So I think so.
अगर आप चेक कर लेते तो डिस्करेज हो जाते
चेक कर लेते तो सॉरी क्या?
डिस्करेज हो जाते
नहीं डिस्करेज नहीं होते ना, बिकॉज फिर हम प्रिपेयर देन वी वुडंट हैव, राइट? सो वी वुडंट हैव, वी हैड ऑक्सीजन, बट वो तो शेरपा के पास थी, वो चला गया। अगर चेक कर लेते तो हम सिलेंडर चेंज कर लेते अपना। So it's not like
that possibility was there.
But then we would have been prepared for it. So yeah, we should have checked, but anyway, कुछ भी हो सकता था। ये तो सिर्फ ऑक्सीजन सिलेंडर खत्म हुआ था। अगर कुछ खराब हो जाए, इक्विपमेंट भी खराब हो सकता है, कुछ भी हो सकता है। Only one set of equipment. You can't carry everything.
So let us quickly take 2 or 3 questions from the house. The house is open for question answers. Anyone has?
May I ask?
Please go ahead, Shivam.
Sir, I want to ask that how did you physically prepare yourself before Everest trek?
Well, how do you physically prepare? You know, there is no rocket science. It is basically building your cardio capacity to go for long distances. As I said, I am a very regular sort of chap. And basically, I was doing a couple of hours in the gym, and you make your back strong and your legs strong. Or doing 90 minutes on the treadmill with full incline and with a rucksack on my back and with weights in my ankles. So essentially, you just build your capacity. It's a little bit like why you prepare for a marathon. It's not very different, but the rest of it is endurance, and the mental game is there isn't much that you can actually do in terms of how you think, right? This is a mental 90, most of it is in the mind. Now, some of that has to be cultivated over a long period by overcoming small challenges or being conscious about what is driving you away from success, what is driving you towards. But some of it is just a natural tenacity which some of us have and some of us don't have. Now, there is no problem in something not being a part of your natural toolkit, but you just have to choose your missions accordingly. So if you don't have mental tenacity, maybe you have something else. Maybe you have a lot of emotional intelligence in some other way. You are very good with people, you are very sensitive, or you are very creative. So I think to that extent, self-awareness is a very important part. But preparing for over 9 months, you can create a body to do a lot. 9 months or 8 months is a lot of time.
I think so, very well answered. It's all a mind game, I think so, most of the time, and your physical strength is more important than your mental strength. Any other question from the house? One last question. Yeah, please, we go.
Yeah, hi Vibhor this side. Just wanted to congratulate you first on that wonderful climb, and I had read the book Into Thin Air earlier, and so it was wonderful to connect some of the pics that you showed, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book also whenever it comes out. Some of the lessons that you mentioned, Aditya,
Your voice is missing, Vibhor.
Am I audible?
Yes, no, please.
Yeah, so I was saying some of the lessons that you mentioned, Aditya, are very important lessons, and I keep coming across them in my business or in other things also. So, with regards to fear, when you said, I read somewhere, I think in Anthony Robbins' book, that fear is just an enabling emotion, and it just tells you that you are not prepared for something. So what you mentioned, I just wanted to stress upon that fear is a way of your body telling you that you need to prepare for this thing.
Yes, you need to prepare and you need to be alert, because some things will happen. And there are things which you should be scared of. There's nothing wrong about being scared of things or being, you have to, that's a natural emotion that has to do its job. And being prepared for it and being afraid of it. So it's like if we are not afraid of an accident, we will not be motivated to drive safe. We will not have a seatbelt on. You don't have a helmet on. I mean, these are natural things which you have to be prepared for and accept the fact that things can go wrong. So yes, in some ways you can prepare, but on the other end, things can still happen, and that's when the other lesson kicks in when you say expect to deal with the unexpected. So not panicking is already more than half the battle. कुछ गड़बड़ होता है तो first reaction, the fight or flight thing, if you start to panic, then your brain you can't deal with the situation anymore. Then you are already like halfway out of the game. But
between 2014 and 2019, I wanted to ask you this thing that after 2014, did you think that you were going to go again, or you were done with it? Now I'm no longer going to try this again, or was it a planned thing after that? Ki 5 years later.
In 2014, I was so disappointed with because there's a lot of politics that happened there. So even 2014, I did not think it was necessary to actually cancel the expedition. But eventually, you have to understand that these are agencies and people, and they've already been paid 100% of the money upfront, and there's no refund. And ultimately, they are doing it for the money, right? So बंदे तो आप क्लाइंबर का तो जो मर्जी पैशन है गोल है, बट एजेंसीज और शेरपास तो पैसे के लिए ही कर रहे हैं ना. तो अगर वो पॉलिटिकली वहाँ पे ऐसा कुछ सिचुएशन क्रिएट हो गई है कि आप कैंसिल भी कर दो और पैसे भी रख लो, so it wasn't necessary. So I was kind of pissed off and I was very upset, and I thought these people can't be trusted. And there were many other things which I did not share here. That one of the lessons, there is a lot of stuff that so Sherpas are good and bad Sherpas, like good and bad people in every trade. So yes, at that time I did not think I want to go back again, and that's why I didn't go, because I would have gone sooner. I would have waited 5 years. But बाद में this Sherpa called me a couple of times and he sort of said, "Hey sir, आप तो कर." मैंने कहा यार अब तो मैं कहाँ कर रहा? नहीं sir, आप तो कर लेंगे. Obviously he was also looking for his own clients. But eventually I said, okay, let's give it one more shot. I'm turning 50. So if it is not now, then probably never. So why not give it one more try? And this time God was kind.
I have seen that life gives you an opportunity, and if you go and grab it at that moment, then it is there. If you are indecisive and you just stay back thinking कि अभी अच्छा सोचते हैं, and then that moment's gone. Just
sometimes, yeah, that's exactly what happens. So sometimes you feel good that you took the chance. Sometimes you also regret that you took those chances. So that's destiny, and you have to accept whatever happens. But once you are in it, the passion and the preparation has to be there. You can't be casual about large projects. You can't be, because you can't fake it, and you can't depend just on luck or something. So luck is very critical, but you don't know when and how much of it will be available.
And like you said, you make your own luck. With preparation, you make your own luck. The more you prepare, the lesser is your dependence on luck, probably.
Yeah, so I am not so sure about that part, because luck is luck. And many things don't depend so much on your preparation, especially when you talk about luck. So if an avalanche is coming in and it's already halfway to you, then it takes a left turn for whatever reason and you have no role in it. वो तो आपका डेस्टिनी था, आपको वापस आना था तो वापस आ गए आप. और अगर आप टाइम अप हो गया था for whatever reason, the lines were indicating something different, then you would. So things happen and miracles happen, but again that is not a part of the preparation. That's not something. So that is something is a part of the uncertainty, because bad luck also comes in very very sharply, and you have seen things that go wrong, and tragedy happens. I mean, many people, 12 people died that year. 12 people में से सारे के सारे कच्चे खिलाड़ी, सब ठीक ठाक लोग थे, लेकिन जब है किस्मत तो है.
I think so. This was the last question, and now I request Mr. Manish Jain to please present the vote of thanks.
Hi Aditya. Thank you so much for such an engrossing and enthralling session. I am sure there are no words to describe what you must have gone through, and I'm sure even you don't have that many words to exactly your journey throughout this 40, 45 days or 50 days of climb. But the way you took us through the entire journey, it was like every 5 minutes we were covering one camp. So it was so well narrated, and obviously, I mean, we can only congratulate you for what you've done, and certainly something to rave about and boast about for us, that we are connected with you and you are connected to Merit.
It's very kind of you, Manish.
No, it is absolutely, it was mesmerizing. The pics were lovely, awesome pictures you shared, and something obviously like you said, that you are not prepared, because I have a friend from outside the country who did only the base camp, and he had prepared for good 7-8 months, and he said that just doing the base camp was something, those 7-8 months of preparation was also not enough. So probably what you said, that it has more to do with mind, because after a while it has very little to do with your physical strength, and once you cross a certain threshold of altitude, it is more to do with mind, like you explained. And certainly with all the leadership lessons you shared right now, they are, even on a day-to-day basis, they are so relevant and apt that if you start implying them, I'm sure there's no goal you can't achieve with these lessons.
Absolutely. I'm totally convinced about that. And just a point about the book. So the book will be printed very soon, and we are doing the book to contribute and generate monies for CRY. So all the money to be generated will go to CRY directly, and the book will actually have to be purchased from CRY. So once it is out, and we are doing it in a way in which like companies can actually buy a few copies, we customize, put the logos of the companies, and so it becomes a company gift, a corporate gift, because it's about management and life, and at the same time the money is going directly to CRY. So my goal is actually to go and raise up to 1 crore rupees for CRY through the book, and I am optimistic that we'll be able to achieve it based on the friends in the corporate world that I have, including friends in Meerut and business owners like all of you. Somebody taking just 10, 20, 50 books, and that all of those monies go directly to CRY. And we've already identified a few projects that we will support. And so once it is out, I'll share with you, and I would appreciate if MMA can also have a look at it. And I'll send out a few copies, and I think it will be great that my friends and connections in Meerut would participate in that effort. So
certainly you have my confirmation right now that my company would definitely be there.
And it's a large-scale coffee table book. It is being printed by Pragati Offset in Hyderabad. So this will be produced to the highest standard. So it will be a keepsake.
Absolutely.
And but I'll send you copies when it's done, and let's hope that we can manage to reach another Everest-like target of raising 1 crore for CRY.
Yes, like you said, you need that tenacity to do things, and this is certainly, obviously, this would not be to the scale of Everest, but yes, collectively, because that is something you were doing purely solo. This is something we can work collectively on.
People have shown interest, and I think once the book comes out, it is actually a very relevant thing to management and life. एंड एवरी डे बेसिस पे होता है. हमारे तो हम तो रोज ही यूज करते हैं सारे प्रिंसिपल. आई मीन आई थिंक द अमाउंट ऑफ एप्लीकेशन आई हैव सीन फॉर दीस प्रिंसिपल्स इज जस्ट इनक्रेडिबल. So anyway, I think I'm repeating myself. So thank you very much. Unless somebody else has any other.
I just wanted to ask you something. कि क्या ये after your expedition, physically or mentally, has there been any kind of effect on you, or some kind of you have experienced some changes at physical or mental level which you feel could be directly linked to that?
So physical part is very very short lived, as I said to you. When you just get back, I mean, मुझे घर के फर्स्ट फ्लोर पे चढ़ने में परेशानी हो रही थी.
अच्छा.
But you climbed Everest 1 week ago.
हाँ, right.
Was finding it hard to go to the first floor of the house without the elevator.
बिल्कुल ठीक है.
Right, so because that is the kind of muscle loss and strength loss that you feel, because वहाँ पे तो आप एक battlefield के बीच में हो. You're not paying attention to what your body is telling you. You just keep going. But eventually the body tells, boss हो गया अत्याचार, कितना करोगे हमारे ऊपर? You know, there is no food, there is no oxygen, there is no sleep. Like, what do you want us to do? So it is always said, also the senior mountaineers tell you, when you get back, you have to be at home, and obviously you have to eat like very rich diet, because there is the weight loss is not just fat loss, it's actually most of it is muscle loss.
Oh, okay.
But that comes back over the next couple of months. Mentally, I think it gives you so much strength. It is a life transforming experience, and I think it is a transforming experience even for those who actually pay attention to it vicariously. And once if people will really go through every part of the commentary in the book and they really internalize it, and if you take time to reflect on it and connect it to your own life situations, we think that it's a life transformational event, because it gives you so much confidence about the fact that I can deal with anything. Like, throw me into anything, I'll come out of it. वो आपका विश्वास ही हो जाता है कि आप तो मतलब कुछ भी कहीं पे भी फेंक दो आप मुझे, मैं आ जाऊंगा अपने आप. I'll deal with it.
Very true. And I think वो कहीं ना कहीं ये जो experience है, कहीं ना कहीं आपको उस place पे ले आता है. Mentally, physically तो ले आता है, mentally भी ले आता है कि हाँ, now I'm ready for anything. But there is nothing which we can take.
Give you belief, right? You also believe that you were almost going to die in those 4 places, but you didn't. So अभी time है.
नहीं, बिल्कुल सही कहा कि you spoke of that 6 inches, just 6 inches of width you have to climb. तो यहाँ पे तो हमें लगता है कि 1000 गज का घर भी छोटा है, and suddenly you realize कि change भी बहुत है to survive.
जाती है.
हाँ, कि 6 inch भी.
I'll send you that video. You share it with the group.
पक्का.
There is a video will literally see the 6 inches and what I mean.
Oh, नहीं, we will certainly have, but we really look forward to the book. और वो चीज बिल्कुल हम we would like to share with everybody and circulate, जितना circulate कर सकते हैं, we will do it at our level, and really look forward to it, and wish you all the very best उसके लिए, book के लिए, and thank you so much again for taking time out and coming onto our platform.
It's really a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. Everybody who listened.
Every minute was.
I'll be happy to answer. There is no problem. You can WhatsApp me or email me or whatever.
Oh, great! That'd be great, because obviously after such a lovely session, वो आफ्टर थॉट्स बहुत आ जाते हैं ना कि यार ये नहीं पूछा.
मेरे तो पूरा टॉक ही आफ्टर थॉट्स के बारे में है.
And let me also inform you that this entire webinar would be there on MMA YouTube channel. Those who have missed it or those who have afterthoughts, they can comment there also, right? And we can directly forward to Mr. Aditya regarding the same.
Awesome.
Thank
you, ladies.
With this, from the core of our heart and on behalf of Meerut Management Association, I personally like to thank Mr. Aditya Gupta ji for joining us.
Aditya, great talk. Really enjoyed.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Good to see you in person also. I mean, virtually though. But you're a great journey, and really wanted to hear every bit of what your experience was. And unfortunately, we couldn't sit during this time, but good, really enjoyed.
No, on behalf
you.
of Meerut Management Association and the entire team, we would like to present you a token of appreciation. I think so. It's not visible here. Let me stop the virtual background and then probably. This is a token of appreciation. We would like to personally hand it over to you.
To have it in my office.
Sure, definitely. We will send it across to your office.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gaurav. Appreciate that.
And once again, a heartfelt thank from the core of heart. It was really wonderful to have you and listen to all the lessons that you have given us. Especially, I'll take the one lesson that you have taken, one step, focus on first, next step. That's the most important lesson. You have to take it from there.
Thank you. All the best, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye bye, Aditya. Thank you very much.
Be safe. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Good day. Bye bye.